Go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ronin's Den. This is our first episode of our deep dive into the Fabula Ultima system. Last week, we had our session 0 for our year-long campaign that we still don't have a name for yet. We will probably have that at the end of the campaign. That's usually how that works. And we decided that our first deep dive into the rules video was going to be session 0, character and group creation. Sound about right?
Yeah, sounds exactly like what we decided on, actually.
So, all right, session 0, Fabula Ultima. I'm going to say this session 0s for Fabula Ultima look way different than any of the session 0s I've ever had for Dungeons and Dragons or Legends of Kralis or Pathfinder or any of the other games that I've run. Typically, those games, you show up with a character in hand and you're just doing your safety tools checklist. Fabula Ultima is a lot more involved.
That's putting it lightly, but what it does is it carefully lists it out for you. So there's no guesswork. There's no jumping around. It's step by step in the rules. I believe there's like there's like 2 or 3 steps at the start of session 0, and then there's a 8-step group world creation, then character creation. And it's all labeled out, and it gives you some very useful tools, which we will cover here in a moment. But of all the TTRPG books that I've ever used, I think this one lays out the session 0 better than most.
Absolutely. And it also does a good job of explaining why these steps are important and how it's going to foster collaborative storytelling, which is the centerpiece of Fabula Ultima. It's collaboration between the players and the storyteller. Dungeons and Dragons, it tends to be, there is collaboration there. Same thing with Pathfinder, but the players take more of a passive role with the world they're about to engage with. The GM, the storyteller, the dungeon master, whatever, they're showing up and they're like, we're going to run Curse of Strahd, or here's my campaign world. In Fabula Ultima, it's going to be created from the ground up in session 0, and the storyteller is going to use that information kind of like a filter to develop the campaign at that point.
Yeah. It's wonderful. Let's just get right into the process of session 0. Since I ran it, I'll go through the steps and
sounds good.
We'll kind of just hit on it again. This starts on page 146 of the player's handbook, if you have that. If not, it's also in the press start for free, which is a free PDF. The quick start for this game is free, and all these steps are in there for free. The first thing it says before you start, commitment and expectations, which I think we all know what that means. What are you committing to? What are the expectations of the players to the game master, and the game master from the players? In our group, it was, we're going to be playing every other Saturday for a year. If you know of dates that you are unavailable, like I'm not available February 1st, now's the time to state them. Commitment and expectations, and it lays it out perfectly. It gives you things like, if a player's missing, what do we do? Do we reschedule? Do we play without them? And I think everybody agreed that if we're missing one person, we're just going to continue to play and kind of put them on follow. Great tool right there.
Yeah, because that's something you hear a lot of discourse on, whether you're on Reddit or TikTok. What do you guys do if you're missing a player? And it's like, wait, you guys didn't cover that in session 0? You're just kind of winging it on a case-by-case situation?
Yeah. Now, granted, most people aren't committing to an entire year like we are, but whatever. The next thing that it tells you, which I think this should be farther down than number 2, is the tone and the theme of the game. Basically covering things like what type of tone do you want with narration? Is it heavily dramatic? Is it more combatic? Is it fantastical? things of that nature. And I feel like putting it number 2, you don't know what the world is yet. You don't know what the characters are yet. This should be at the end, but it's a very important thing. That is the one criticism I have, is this should be farther down.
And I think the way I look at that is more of like part of the safety tools section, where what type of world do you want to play in, rather than the hard, this is the absolute tone of the game. So I think you and I have a slightly different way that we look at that, but I agree that I think it should be further down the list as well.
The third thing is rules and challenge, meaning there's a bunch of optional rules within Fabula Ultima for damage, for advancement, for all kinds of different things.
And we're going to touch
on it tells you, talk to the group. What rules are you adopting? Which ones are you not using? For us, it's pretty bog standard. We're doing the base Fabula Ultima for this run through because we want to learn that, and then maybe later on we'll throw a couple of those optional rules in, but it clearly tells you to cover that with your group.
Yep. And especially with Fabula Ultimate, like, it's had a couple eteras printed since the core book came out, and what's now standard isn't what's included in the core book when it comes to initiative, for example. There's an initiative check in the core rulebook, but later in the publication cycle, the writers came up with an alternative initiative that everybody's using. It's just the standard way to do initiative now, which is if there's a combat, the players go first and then an NPC. Unless that NPC you're fighting is of a villain classification, then the villain goes first and the players go first. And we agreed we're going to run with what the current bolted on initiative structure is, rather than that rolled out group check.
Yeah. Then the next step, talk about safety. I think everybody knows what that means. That's covered a lot in the TTRPG world. We're going to move on from there because
safety tools go in a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Then you go into the actual world creation. It tells you to grab the world sheet and the map sheet. I don't like the map sheet. I think the maps are too small, so I created my own map. But I did grab the world sheet. And it tells you to look at things like the 8 pillars of a Fabula Ultima game. Take a look at souls, conflicts and struggles, and fantastical diverse world, which basically gives you a bunch of idea of how the game is supposed to work, what type of worlds are supposed to be. You're collectively as a group supposed to decide how souls work. And then you go into, like I said, that 7-step. First step in it, which was probably the most interesting from our session 0, choose the shape of your world. Mm-hmm. And not only does it give you this little box in the flowchart, if you go to, no, actually it doesn't. That one doesn't have a chart for. But basically you work with the group to come up with the shape of the world and like the atmosphere, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So for us, we chose a world in a crystal sphere resting on the nose of a giant space capybara. Our world's called Capiterra. But it could be, is it a flat disk world? Is it just a standard globe? Maybe it's a donut where everything's on the interior of it, kind of like Sigil in Planescape for D&D. What is your cosmic and world physical structure look like? The map sheet helps you figure out what a travel day is from there. So how far is a day? I really like the fact that you use the hex map, where we're able to easily say this hex is this many days. And it's each hex is 2 days on our map currently?
Depends on foot. It is 2 days per hex. If you are on any kind of animal, it is 1 day per hex. If you are in a vehicle, be that airship, motorized vehicle, motorcycle, etc., it is half a day per hex. I feel like hexes, because they're the not the squares, the hexes the center to another center is always the same no matter where it is. So it's easy to track. I like hex maps. I think they're easy, and figuring out a travel day on them is so much easier than a square.
Agreed. I love hex maps for overland, and I prefer them in combat too. It might be the BattleTech player in me.
That was part number 2, actually, figuring out the travel day and having a map sheet.
Yep.
So number 3 is the role of magic and technology. If anybody has ever played the JRPGs of the early 2000s, there is always a theme of magic, but there's always technology and that sphere as well. And as a group, you're supposed to determine together what is the role of magic and technology. Now, this is one of the ones that has a D20 chart or roll randomizer on it to give you inspiration, or just look at it and pick one. So for instance, number 1, Magitech disturbs the natural balance. It gives you a lot of tools to determine how magic and technology flow together. Eric, what did we decide in ours?
So we decided that magic has the potential to be dangerous. Like there's an area on our map that's basically magic Chernobyl. Can't really go there anymore. But magic's good. Like everybody does have, there's magic present, there's technology present. It's the counterbalance to magic for us.
And I like that dichotomy as well. I've always liked the idea of magic being this unnatural force, right? Magic is literally destroying the world, which is why technology coming has found a way to replace that. But there are some things technology still can't do, so you have to resort to magic. It's a great dichotomy there. I'm going to do a random roll to see which one we come up with, and we'll just talk about that for a second, just because I want to roll some dice.
Math
and
rocks.
We got number 15. Spellcasters are trained in academies and then hired by nobles. So
Okay.
in that world, spellcasters would be very valued because they're trained and then they go serve nobles. I feel like that would be like the Arthurian legend type of story. Technology probably doesn't play a big role there. Spellcasters are sought after for their wisdom, for their power, their ability. That's the way I would interpret that one.
And I could look at it and say something, it could be somewhere close to, say, Final Fantasy VIII as well, where there is technology, but there are these academies where they learn magic in conjunction with it, and they become kind of like magical mercenaries that are hired out to go handle threats that these nations and nobles in them can't handle with their own standing armies. Kind of like an elite special forces.
Which, the difference there is really what makes this game fun and makes this world building section so much fun, because every player is going to have their different interpretations of this thing, and working together to build what is perfect for your group at that time makes it so much better. And I like that it has that random table to give you inspiration, and it's something that is a focus, meaning it's important to the game.
Yep. Kingdoms and nations.
And them.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Go ahead.
I was like, kingdoms and nations are going to be popping up next. The way I like to do this is have everybody come up with their own town or city that they're from, place it on the map, and come up with what that place is about.
Absolutely. Like in the game we were running on Mondays, my character Lancius was from the ancient forest of Artemis, which was the Elven Kingdom. I did a little bit of writing up about it. Basically, I like the idea as well where you create your hometown, you tell the game master what it's about. In our game, Kara created Aquileia, which is a kingdom, and she gave me a long write-up about like the lineage process, who the hierarchy is, and it's going to become more, when the players create it themselves, it's more real to them. they care about it more. So in that Monday game that we had, my character gave a damn about Artemis because his family's there. The people he loves are there. He's a prince of that kingdom. Those are his people. Like, it mattered to him. And for me as a player, having that emotional connection because I made it all the more important.
Yeah, a lot of like D&D. I don't want people to think I'm dogging on D&D here. I'm not, but it's just like the game most people are familiar with. You play a game in that, and people say, "Oh, I'm from this town," but the town's already been either built by the module or built by the game master who's running that game. The player has very little say in what that's about. It's like going to a buffet and picking out what looks good on the table. Whereas in Fabula Ultima, you're the chef. You're cooking what is going to be presented to everybody else, and all of the players and the storyteller are going to get to sample what you've created at the table now. You get a lot more investment from that.
And then from there, it goes to step 5, which is discussing historical events. And every player picks a historical event that happened in the world.
Yeah. And this is honestly probably one of my favorite things, like my top 2 favorite things in the session 0, historical events and the threats. Because you get to create this own little, like the piece of history in the game that's so personalized to you and your character, and you can add in all these story beats as a storyteller that just umbrella off of that. One of the ones I created for this game for a historical event was the this magical issue that caused these arcanums to just start popping into the world, which are like magical spirits, kind of like summons from Final Fantasy.
Think the summons from Final Fantasy.
And that was the event that I came up with for the game, for the historical event. Was something happened and all of these like summoned spirits appeared in the world.
And another thing that this does is you were the first one to give a historical event, and yours was the alignment of stars and planets that allowed the arcana to enter the world. People fed off that.
Yeah.
Like, other people's historical events or threats or enigmas or mysteries branched off of that. You can take something someone said and think, well, that's interesting. Well, what about this? And it kind of just built our campaign setting out, because we went from ice or sphere on the nose of a capybara to arcana flooded in from a historical event to now everything is kind of like, why are the arcana here? What are the arcana? What's beyond the capybara? Like, what is the... We went so esoteric with it, and it's all because of this world building process. But that builds us into number 6, which is the enigmas and the mysteries of the world. And this is the one that was a little hard for, I think, some of the people in our group. Mm-hmm. Because it's something that you're supposed to pick something that your character would be interested in. Mm-hmm. And a couple of the ones that were suggested, I had to stop for a second and be like, I don't know how that's actionable, right? Like, yeah. So a tip for a game master here is to think about them as well as, like, if someone gives you something that's so vague that you can't do anything with it, feel free to be like, maybe we need to narrow that down more.
Yeah. And this is your chance to kind of go a little nuts, and at the same time, you want to make it actionable, but come up with like something that you really want to find an answer to in the game that, you know, nobody's thought of yet. A simple, easy example could be, what are these standing stones that are all over the world? You know, your game's equivalent to Stonehenge. Where do they come from? Who made them? Why do they make them? Did they serve any purposes? One of the ones in the Monday game we were running was, where did all this Magitech technology come from that just kind of buried in some of these ruins? Who was this ancient civilization with this Magitech stuff? We didn't get to touch on it too much because of the way that story went, but that was one of the things we came up with in session 0. But yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely do want to be able to go, that's cool, but I don't know how we're going to handle that. Like, that's philosophical.
Yeah.
We need something game related.
We need something actionable.
Yep.
And but number 7 is one of the ones that is actually kind of actionable, and that is the threats.
Yes. I think this is one that some people coming from more traditional game setups struggle with as well, because they're so used to being surprised by who the big bad guy is, who the big villain is. Like, they're just used to being told. Fabula Ultima asks you to say, who do you want the big villain to be, and why are they the big villain?
And I also like the fact that it doesn't have to be an extreme, like it doesn't have to necessarily be a person. Like one of the ones Kara picked was there's a prophecy that the moon is going to be destroyed. That's a threat. Something bad is going to happen that is going to destroy the moon, which could have ramifications for magic and technology and just the overall world, the shape of the world, things of that nature. I forget the other ones at the moment because I'm blanking, but
I have Ruinbringer, where I'm holding back some kind of evil, which we haven't fully hashed out yet. And when certain conditions are going to be satisfied, my ruin will come true, and I'm going to unleash a supreme villain into the world. Not because I want to, it's just a quirk my character has.
yeah, and it like I said, that's the last part of session 0. So the players create the places, they create the mystery, they create the horror historical events, they create the threats. Everything is personalized, and it was done together as a group.
Yep.
And it just makes the story so much richer and have so much more meaning. And that's why I really enjoy this session 0 step by step. And I can't recommend Fabula Ultima enough after that.
No. But one of the other things that you should do in session 0, though, is create your characters as a group. That is it. This is not a game where you want to show up with a character. Well, you can concepts, but you really shouldn't settle in on this is going to be my character when I come to play the game. Because as you saw with those 7 steps, what you may want to play may change as somebody comes up with a new threat or a new mystery or their historical event. You might go, oh, wait, I have a character idea that would work really well with that. And you could
also with the world you've built, the character you built may not fit, right? Like if you have a couple concepts built and not just a set character, you can be like, okay, these 2 definitely don't fit here, but these 2, now I get to look at these 2. Okay, the moon's going to be destroyed. This character would be fit that very well. Like there's just ways to making a character after you've built the world, just it flows better and the character's going to fit better.
Let's go ahead and make a character real quick, actually, just to show how easy this is.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to switch over to, I use Foundry. We're going to be using Foundry for our game, and I found this Fabula Ultima module for it. I will try and find this again and put the link for it in the description when we upload the video. And the first thing that you want to do is we're just going to come up with a character name here real quick, and I'm just going to call him Character. We don't have a name for him, but the first step in character creation is going to be coming up with our identity, theme, and origin.
Want to switch us over to Foundry real quick?
I did.
Oh,
wait.
It did not
screen.
go.
Boom. There we go. Double click it.
There we go. Yeah, first thing is coming up with your, actually it's your identity is first.
And identity.
And I'm just going to roll.
Go ahead and roll for that. But for people listening, identity is your declaration of class, really. This could be anything because Fabula Ultima has a class system, but your identity would be like, I'm a, well, you just roll dice. What's our example?
So I've got an animated puppet mercenary. 615 and 610. Young gifted animated puppet mercenary. 17 with a heart of gold.
Okay.
I'm Pinocchio.
So what tables were you rolling on there, real quick? Because we don't
So
have that up.
there's the identity creation tables. There it tells you to roll a d6 and a d20, and you roll them up to 2 times, which I did. I got 5 and 1, which was an animated puppet, and I got 6 and 13, which was a mercenary. That is on page 156. Then it goes to adjectives and detail. It says up to 2 adjectives and up to 1 detail. So I got the young and
Heart of Gold.
gifted heart of gold. So that was the theme. Animated puppet mercenary with a heart of gold, young and gifted.
Yep. That's the theme. Your theme is going to be something different.
Your theme, you pick between there's a few of them here: ambition, anger, belonging, doubt, duty, guilt, hope, justice, mercy, or vengeance. I feel like with this animated puppet, it would be belonging. You're afraid of being alone, forgotten, or abandoned. If you're an animated puppet, you don't fit in anywhere. You're a construct. Something built you and animated you. So belonging makes the most sense there.
I like belonging. So your theme is basically a one-word emotional descriptor for your character on what's most important in driving to them.
Correct.
Which then brings us to our origin.
And then origin, which is all heroes come from somewhere. It's their origin. It might be a humble village, a great city, or something more fantastical, such as a place in the depths of the ocean. I'm going to say that he came from his his creator's puppet shop. And we will say that is in the town of Geppetto, because Pinocchio reference.
I know I just butchered the
Puppet
spelling
shop
of
in Geppetto.
I butchered that spelling.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay. So that's where we get just the general, who is this character? The next thing I think we want to do on the list is choose our stat layout. Fabula Ultima does stats a little bit differently, a lot differently than a lot of other traditional role-playing games. Instead of rolling for stats, you have 4 stats in Fabula Ultima, and you assign them a die value, meaning anywhere from a die 6 to a die 10 at character creation is what you would roll for your tests. And we'll go into how tests work in a future video. But there's 3 categories as the dice layout. What are those?
Those are jack of all trades, meaning you get a D8 across the board.
Okay.
You get average, which is a D10, 2 D8s, and a D6. And specialized, which is 2 D10s and 2 D6s. When I play, typically pick the average because I like having that one that's just a little bit better. And I feel like with the animated puppet, we're going to go with might as the D10.
Okay.
I think dexterity and willpower would be D8, and insight would be D6. He's an animated puppet. His insight would be lower because he's not human or any type of known species. He's a construct. He could never understand what it means to be human. Hyperbole there. Don't crucify me. But yeah, so that's the one I think we'll go with for those. Might a D10, willpower and dex D8, and insight a D6.
Got him. What classes do we think this is going with? Now, puppet. I kind of
Well, remember, he is a mercenary.
He is a mercenary, so that would fit. Guardian, Weapon Master, and Fury are the three classes that come to mind right away for me. I don't know. What classes are you thinking? Well, let's start with the first class. Let's just get one of them down. Weapon Master?
The first class, I think, definitely Weapon Master.
All right, let's go ahead, go to the classes section, and we'll drop Weapon Master down on this class. Now, what I like about this module is you could click on the class, and it tells you all of the abilities you get for that class. And if you're looking at the classes in the book, they're all going to be right there as well. Mercenary. Guardian feels good.
Guardian would be good as well. He's probably has great weapons. He's probably got a bunch of armor. And then he is a puppet. I think just to give him a little bit of diversity, maybe give him one in Orator.
Okay.
Because I mean, he's a mercenary and he's very combat focused, but I also want to give him like a little bit of a charm. I mean, he's designed to like entertain children. So Orator just feels like it would fit there.
I like that
as well.
So what we're doing here in character creation at this point, Fabula Ultima, starting character, you have 5 character levels. And the system requires you to multi-class. You have to take a minimum of 2 classes, but you can have a maximum of 3 leveling at a time. So we have our 3 classes. We have 3 character levels devoted. That means we have 2 levels we can put stuff into at this point. And the way we would figure out where we want to do that is based off of the next part, which is going to be skills. Let's look at these in the same way we looked at the classes themselves when we were putting them in. And let's start with Weapon Master. These skills are all about, well, using weapons. Blade Storm will allow you to do multi-attacks. Bone Crusher will inflict a dazed status effect. Breach lets you break armor and weapons. Counterattack lets you counterattack an attack that comes at you. And Melee Weapon Mastery makes you better with your weapons. It gives you a bonus to hit.
I like... Go ahead.
I'll say I'm a big sucker for counterattack.
Okay.
What were you thinking?
I was going to say I like the idea of Blade Storm because it gives him multi to his attack.
Okay.
He's a puppet. He's going to be erratic. Like, he's not going to move like a human. He's going to be able to, like, swing his arms differently. So being able to, like, maneuver to get more multi-attack makes sense. Counterattack would make sense, too, because, like I said, he's a puppet. He's made of wood. He'd be able to maneuver in ways that are unnatural. It would be hard to fight him.
Yeah. Let's go with Blade Storm.
Okay.
Because we have levels. Like, we have 2 levels we can still pump into this character. So we can always decide to add another one here. What were you thinking for Orator, though? That's the class that I was thinking the most. So you have Condemn, which lets you make up an opposed test and either gives Shaken or Daze to an enemy. These are status effects that will lower their dice they get to roll in certain tests. Encourage will allow somebody to recover hit points, or you can give them a willpower bonus to their die pool. In You My Trust in You, I'm sorry, I kind of Yoda'd that one. The player character is able to hear the check, can spend a Fabula point or invoke a trait. One of the things that we set up in the very first part of this character, their identity, their theme, or their origin, or a bond, which we'll cover in future videos. And they can re-roll dice to improve the result of the check. So allow somebody to do like a re-roll, looks like. Persuasive.
Yep.
They can perform
Ooh.
a check, and they can erase sections of a clock if you approach if the approach relied on charm or diplomacy, deception, or intimidation. You can fill or erase parts of a clock for each 20 mind points spent this way. That's neat.
I was thinking unexpected ally.
I like unexpected ally. So what this one will do is let somebody spend a Fabula point. They can choose a non-hostile creature as long as they can hear and understand the character. If they do that, the creature will become helpful so long as you are kind and respectful to them and your requests are reasonable. I like that. It's kind of like a charm person. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean it's a living puppet. It makes sense that people are going to be like, "Hey, let's help the puppet."
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. It's a child's toy. Of course I'll get you the food from that restaurant for your friend. You came to life to save your
and
friend.
You picked Guardian. So which of those do you think? Because I picked the last two abilities. So you're picking this one.
So I like Protect. He's a mercenary. He's a puppet, child's toy. Protect will allow them to inject themselves into an attack so that it'll hit them instead of the intended target. So they have that, they're a child's toy. Like they're there to help and protect. It's like Woody saying, "Hey, I'll take that shot from you," instead of, Yeah, I like.
When you tell your kids that their teddy bear protects them at night, this guy actually does that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking Protect for that reason.
So I think one thing that we need to quickly mention is that Fabula Ultima as a system does not care about your race or your species. For instance, animated puppet. No statistical difference from a human, a dwarf, a lizard man, an owl man, a turkey man. No statistical difference. If you want to play a tiefling, you're a tiefling. If you want to play a dwarf, you're a dwarf. That is one of the things I like about this system. There's no argument about, well, what does a race have? This a racial modifier and this one and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Just be what you want to be. Right now, we're an animated puppet. I played a character once that was a anthropomorphic tiger. It's a great thing that there's no statistical benefit. Just do what you want. Do what you want.
And you don't have to try and find the species in D&D that best fits what you're looking to do. Let's face it, if we were playing D&D, this would be a Warforged or one of those autognomes from Spelljammer. Like, you'd have to go with one of those two. And then you could flavor it. It's just whatever you want it to be from the get-go. I love it. I think the other thing I want to touch on here now as well is the way that you build your character. We're at the point where we want to think about skill synergy now. We got our base classes, we got our base skills, but what can we add that'll synergize with these for our final two levels? And the one that's jumping out at me right away, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we have Blade Storm, which does multi. We have Protect, which allows them to take an attack instead of one of the other party members. I think a great skill synergy here would be to pump a level into Weapon Master and take counterattack at that point.
I think counterattack would work, and the one I think that would be great for the last one is actually Fortress from the Guardian. Because if he's going to be taking hits for people, we'd want him to have more hit points, and it's skill level times 3 additional hit points. So if he's taking hits for people, he's got to be a little tougher and have a little more meat to him. So
yeah, I like that. So here's how this character could play at the table so far. They can make allies with non-hostile creatures, which is awesome. But when a fight breaks out, and somebody in their party's getting attacked, they can say, "No, you're not actually getting attacked. I'm invoking Protect," which allows them to become the target of that attack. once they're attacked, that could trigger counterattack from them, which is if an attack hits or misses, if the accuracy check was an even number, they get to attack back at that point in time. So it's a potential second attack coming from this character as a free action in that round. And if they want,
who already get 2 attacks, so he would get 3 attacks per per turn or per round of combat potentially.
Possibly 4, because they could do their multi-attack with Blade Storm on their normal attack, but there's nothing in the language that forbids them from using counterattack with Blade Storm as well.
Ooh. I would say I would caution that, because doesn't it counterattack, you only get so much damage?
So
like it's not as much.
It's not as much. It ignores the high roll. It treats your high roll as 0. So when we get to the weapons here in just a second, it'll just be the weapon damage code. But at the same time, that's 4 possible attacks around that this character could do. And that's where the tactics of Fabula Ultima lie. It's in the skill synergies rather than where are you putting this character on the map. Because this game doesn't care about combat maps. I have an example of a map behind all of this stuff that I'll show you guys when we're done with the character. But the last part here, because we don't have any spells we need to pick, is going to be items.
And we start with 500 Zenit, think gold for the D&D players out there. Yeah. But you start with 500 Zenit to spend. I think because we want this boy to take hits for people, I think we splurge a little bit and we get the runic plate for 250 Zenit.
I was going to suggest the very same thing.
I like steel plate, but that's 300 Zenit, and it doesn't leave a lot left for a weapon and potentially a shield. So we have 250 there. Now we have to think, what type of weapon does he want to use? Thanks to Weapon Master, we can pick martial weapons. Mm-hmm. I think he's wielding a sword, like a one-handed weapon with a shield. He's a defender, but he also strikes. And he gets multi-attack with that one weapon. So I like the idea of a shield and a weapon there. But we have to look at the shields being 150 or 100 Zenit, depending upon which one we buy. So we'd have either 100 for a weapon or 150 for a weapon.
Well,
so
how much does a bronze sword cost?
Bronze sword is 200.
Damn.
Maybe we don't get the shield yet, and that will be something he will get later on.
In which case, maybe we give him a two-handed weapon.
Yeah, for now.
What's a great sword?
A great sword is 200 Zenit. Okay. A war axe is 250.
So a war axe would give us 0 left. I kind of feel like he might be afraid of axes because he's made of wood, and axes chop trees down. You know, he's a puppet. He's kind of flexible. He does kind of like the movement stuff, like you were saying, multi-attacks. What about a rapier?
Or a katana.
Katana. You know what? Let's go with a katana, because katanas are just cool.
Yep, and that is 200 Zenit, which leaves us with 50 remaining.
And we don't need to spend everything.
No. And then we roll for pocket change, which I need to find that amount.
I think it's 2d6 times 10.
$2d6 times 10. That is 40. So we would have 90 pocket change of Zenit.
Perfect. Now this character is fully fleshed out and created. On this module, I can click the rest button, and his health and his mind points go to full. We set him up with 3 Fabula points to start with. All characters start with 3 Fabula points. Again, we'll touch that on a future video. And if we had an image, we could add it here in the module. We don't have one currently, so I'm sorry, but you are going to be imageless character. What should we name our puppet?
Ooh. That I want to say Pinocchio, but I feel like we'll get copyright striked. So,
Yeah. Well, there's Ted.
Who's
the teddy
another?
bear.
Yeah, there's Slappy.
Slappy it is. We got to go with a little bit of comedy here. So Slappy the puppet. Awesome sauce. Now, the last thing. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was about to say the last thing. You do it.
All right, last thing that we look at in session 0 when everybody has gone through all of these steps to make their characters. The very last thing, and I think that this is so awesome the system does it, is you pick what kind of group you are. And this answers a question that so many other systems fail to answer, and that is, why is your group of player characters together and why do they adventure? So many people just leave it up to figure it out in session 0, like figure it out when the game starts. And you get these groups where it's like, oh, I don't want to go do that mission because my character wouldn't do that. In Fabula Ultima, you figure that out in session 0. And the types of groups there are, and we don't have all the different we don't have a group of characters made, but we can talk about the groups. There's the Brought Together by Fate, the Guardians, Heroes of the Resistance, Revolutionaries, and Seekers. And these groups start over on page 221, and they go until page 225. And they give you they give you a D6 chart for each one for what appeals to this group. Now, we're not going to go through each one of
the D6 chart is actually the prologue, which is supposed to be the start of the adventure, which we kind of glossed over in our session 0. But yeah, so it basically helps you all figure out how your group started together. What was that inciting incident that got you to be this? So a quick example, under the Guardians, during a ceremony before your departure, a dark force suddenly reveals itself. The life of the chosen one is in danger. And then you build out from there. It would be good to note that there are some that have specific things connected to them. Like the Guardians, you pick a chosen one in the group, which can kind of step on people's toes. I think when our group did it, we were looking at it and Kara's like, I don't want to be a chosen one. Yeah. So she wasn't a chosen one.
I like the Brought Together by Fate here. Just give me a D6 roll real quick. If you got one sitting next to you real handy.
6.
Okay. So people from a variety of countries and organizations have set out to investigate bizarre phenomenon. You are among them. Why are you here? What were you sent by somebody else? What are your theories and beliefs about this phenomenon? I think that fits so well with a puppet mercenary with a heart of gold. Don't you?
I sure do.
Okay. And after that, your session 0 is honestly complete. You are ready to go into your first session. I absolutely love Fabula Ultima and its session 0 setup. Everything it does to foster collaborative storytelling and bring the group together to create the world and all the little bits and pieces that they're going to interact with.
It is honestly one of the best step-by-step guides for world creation, character creation, session 0, why are we doing this, why are we together, that I've ever seen. It is honestly probably second to none. And if you just follow the steps, step by step by step by step, you are not going to miss anything. And it is going to come together perfectly.
Absolutely. And that's all I got for tonight. We're going to continue doing videos on Fabula Ultima on the weeks that we're not playing the game. We're going to do a deep dive in all the rules and the optional stuff. So we'll touch on how the different checks are performed, rituals, things like technospheres in the future as well. I look forward to these videos. Fabula Ultima is one of my favorite games, and I am really excited to dedicate this next year entirely to this game.
As am I. And if you want to see the game played, our first session of actual play is going to be next Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, here on Ronin's Den. We have Kara, we have Joe, we have Eric, we have Howard. I will be running that game, and we are looking forward to tell that story. As Eric said, there are a lot of other videos going to come out about various parts of this. As always, if you like this content, if you like these videos that we make, please like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We want to be one of the channels promoting Fabula Ultima to the wider masses, and we appreciate you being here.
Have a good night.